Hi, it's Stephen from Service Integrity. I just want to walk you through the anatomy of a bad survey. This is something that I came across when I was traveling to Europe recently. And I just want to point out that it's all about how surveys can go wrong. Now, this was collected in flight, and where Emirates collect the information is on their in-flight entertainment system. Basically, you go through it and you can find a survey hidden away way down in the dungeons of their huge in-flight system. And the photos were taken with a phone on a real flight, so their quality is not exactly like a screenshot or anything like that. And if anyone wants to talk to me, Stephen DiPietro at serviceintegrity.com.au. Now let's get into it. Basically, when you come in, it'll ask you some questions about your country of residence and your sex and how old you are, and they're kind of good questions, and that's a good start. So you want to understand if different people look at the experience differently. They also ask your nationality, where you came from, and if it's your first time travelling with Emirates. And if that's the case, then fine, the questionnaire might go off in different directions. I'm not sure that it does. So also a good start. Now here's where it all starts to go very pear-shaped. What's the main reason for you taking a trip? Now this is interesting because it asks what's your main reason, so that implies one reason. In this case, this was business for me, but it was business and pleasure. How do I fit that in? It doesn't imply that you should have more than one answer. In fact, it implies there's only one valid reason for your travel. So we start seeing a few warts on this thing. Now also, these things don't really matter in the customer service experience necessarily. Like, is it important to know whether I'm on business or on pleasure or whatever it is? If we're looking to measure the customer experience, then do that. If you're looking to understand why people are traveling with you, then do that as something separate, and you can do that outside of the in-flight experience. You could ask that later on in a survey, a follow-up survey, or even before the people take off on their flights. So what were your three main reasons for choosing Emirates? Now, again, that sounds pretty reasonable. Now here they ask for three main reasons, not the main reason. And previous experience, quality of flight, all of those types of things all sound very good. However, what if there's only one reason? And what if I didn't buy the ticket? So the main reason why I chose Emirates might be that my boss paid for it, or my parents paid for it, or I paid for my kids. It's not even there as an option. So they haven't thought out the options well enough. They're assuming that everyone is going to book their own flight. Okay, are you a member of the frequent flyer program? Sounds like a good question. However, this becomes a big issue through this questionnaire, because wherever you know something about your customer, you should be implying it in the questionnaire. That is, you don't need to ask them again. So the airline knows exactly what seat I'm in. They know exactly which screen is doing, which survey this is being done on, that is which screen, and it knows everything about me. So why ask me this question? You already know whether I'm a frequent flyer or not, so don't clutter this thing up with junk. They go as far as to say, what's your Emirates Sky Rewards number? Like that's something that most people don't remember. Now, the other thing is that I'm a code share frequent flyer with Qantas. So Qantas and Emirates are like brothers and sisters, and you can travel on one just like the other, and you get the same benefits. I'm a gold frequent flyer on Qantas, and I get certain benefits. They become important later, and it actually permeates this whole questionnaire as to how that becomes a problem. Could be from American Airlines or any other of the airlines that are in the same frequent flyer program. So again, work this out for yourself. And also, how would you rate the Emirates Sky Rewards program overall? This is irrelevant for what we're doing. We're measuring a customer service experience. We're not measuring how you would rate the frequent flyer program overall. There are so many other things involved in that, like status credits and miles accumulation and redemption and a whole lot of other things that are completely irrelevant here. How did you make the ticket reservation? Now, this one's also interesting because in this case, I made the ticket reservation online, but I didn't use the Emirates website, which is up in the top right-hand corner here. I used the Qantas website, and I booked my Emirates flight on Qantas. It doesn't cover this at all. So yes, it's other. However, this is a reasonably big other, especially for people flying, say, from Australia through to Dubai, or from America to Dubai. So you're missing out on a huge chunk of the market to understand where this came from. Again, however, you know this information as an airline because you got the reservation. You know where it came from. So you don't need to ask the customer where they got the reservation from. And in some cases, the person who didn't buy the ticket for themselves wouldn't even know. So if my employer bought my ticket, I wouldn't know how they paid for it, or if it was a client, it just appeared. So I wouldn't be able to answer that question. Okay, at the airport, they ask a few seemingly good questions. How did you check in on this flight, check-in counter, etc. Now, again, as a Qantas frequent flyer or any other flyer in another airline that's linked to Emirates, I get the same benefits. So I experience zero queues. So when it comes down here to saying waiting time in queue, mine was excellent because I don't wait in queue. Even though I was flying economy, I check in at the business class counter. So there was a long snaky queue there in the economy side, but I don't do that queue. So as far as I'm concerned, the queue time was excellent. Ask someone else in economy and they may have said the queue time was poor, because indeed it was. So this question has to be contextual in terms of who I am and what I'm doing here. So what happens now is that the client, or here Emirates, get a false positive. They think they're doing really well, but actually they might not be doing as well as they think they are. So airlines know everything about the customer in the seat. So again, all this information should be captured at the source rather than asking us as the customers. So let's go on. So at the departure gate, a whole lot of questions here about attitude of staff and information regarding the boarding process. However, when they ask information about the boarding process, is any information sufficient? So did they say all the things that they should have said about flight delays, about how long the flight's going to take, about the temperature on the port you're going to land in? The person answering this question has no context around what information they are looking for, that the airline should be providing. Now, this is where a mystery shopping comes in, because as a mystery shopper, you'd go in there saying, okay, the client is asking these 5 or 6 things should be said, so I'm actually looking out for them, and you can tick to say whether these things occurred or didn't occur. But just throwing a very blanket question out to someone like this is completely useless, because the information, it depends on what the person filling it out perceived to be good information. Also, it says clarity of boarding announcements. Well, are we talking about the clarity of the sound system, the clarity of the process, the clarity of the staff members' accents, all of these, some of these? You just don't know. So again, you're letting the person filling in the questionnaire put in their own spin on things, knowing that the client, or in this case Emirates, wants to know something specific. So you're not going to get the specific information you're after, and you're going to get misleading information. And again, as a Qantas frequent flyer, I get better service, but again, Emirates don't know this, and they should, because they won't know that I'm going to be treated slightly better than a normal economy passenger. Okay, so at the departure gate, punctuality of flight, things like that. Again, this issue of being part of a partner program comes into play. Also, the punctuality of the flight. The airline should know this. Don't ask the customer. You know exactly when your flight took off, so don't ask me. It's another wasted question. Less is more in any questionnaire. The other thing, again, this is perceptions. Some customers would consider a 1-minute delay as being fine, excellent. Others might consider it as very good or even poor. So punctuality flight, does that mean like exactly to the second? Is it the time I boarded or the time the plane actually pulled back from the gate? What does constitute flight departure? Customers don't know that. Again, this is where in mystery shopping you can say, well, flight departure is exactly this thing, or we should start boarding at exactly 40 minutes before the flight takes off. Those types of things we can cover, but if you ask a customer, a normal customer who's going about their business and didn't notice these things before they even got on the plane, you're asking them on the plane after a couple of drinks to go back and remember, oh, did the flight leave on time? I'm not sure if it did. I think it did it not? And they have this internal dialogue, if they could be bothered. So again, this is a useless question. You're wasting your time. As for in the cabin, cleanliness of toilets. Now, this depends on whether the passenger used the toilets early or late in the flight. Again, a mystery shopper might go in and say, well, I'll go in just before the plane takes off and check it out. I'll go in hourly intervals or 3 or 4 hour intervals or whatever and check what's going on and whether they're cleaning them. This depends completely on when you use the bathroom or the toilet, and also depends on who went in there before you. Storage space. This could be marked down because of other inconsiderate passengers. What if the passenger sitting next to me chocked the overhead locker full of their junk and I didn't get any room? Is that the airline's fault? Well, no, it's not. The airline also doesn't control the size of those bins. So this is something that is a separate thing to measure, that maybe you'd measure through different methods with your frequent flyers, or you'd ask it as one specific question in a questionnaire in a different context. But in this context, you're on a flight and it's full of other people. Anyone could be screwing this up for you. Also, the overall cabin features, please rank those. Excellent, very good, and whatever. What does that refer to? You've got all these other things that have been measured, and then you ask a blanket question of, overall cabin features. Are we talking about the carpet? Are we talking about the look of the carpet? Are we talking about the paint job? What is it that you're referring to here? Is it the whole thing generally? It doesn't really tell us anything. Okay, the comfort in flight, also very, very important. However, the questionnaire doesn't know what class I travelled in, and no point does it say you business, economy, or whatever. And it doesn't know what seat I'm sitting in. Am I sitting in an exit row or whatever? We know it doesn't know the seat or anything else, because if it knew these things about me, which it should, it would have not asked me a whole lot of stupid questions about my frequent flyer number and whatever. So I'm assuming they don't know which class I've travelled in, so the seat comfort and everything else is going to be very, very different. Sleeping comfort is also an interesting one, that external factors can affect it, like a screaming child, or drinking too much, or you have the flu, or customers will answer these things literally. Did you sleep comfortably? No, I didn't. So you mark it down as no. That might have nothing to do with the seat or the quality of the flight or anything else. Actually, that's another thing that could affect it. It could just be turbulence, which is completely outside of the control of the airline. So you have to be careful about these questions and ask them more precisely. Amount of legroom. This depends on not only have I got an exit row and am I in business class, but also how tall am I? A 5'3" person's going to find it might be fine, but a 6'4" person will not. So it's got to be contextual. Okay, the cabin service itself, reasonable questions, responsiveness of crew and all those types of things, that's okay. Rate the cabin service overall. Again, I don't know why this is asked, because cabin service overall, this is like the quality of the interior of the airline. It's a very broad, very general question, and there are so many factors that can affect this thing. So I think it would be better to ask more precise questions and dump this one. Food and drink, very, very important. However, again, it doesn't know what class I'm travelling in, and there's a huge difference, as most of us would know. How would you rate the food and drink overall? Now, this is also tricky because they've lumped food and drink in together. They should be separate questions. They are both important, but very different. You see, beer's sealed in a factory, and it's always consistent. The only thing that really varies with beer, for example, is the temperature. Water is water, like the quality of the water. Well, water's just water. Food, however, needs to be well presented, needs to be warm, not disturbed and all mucked around, not dry bits around it, and actually there's a lot to be said about the quality of the food. So it's a different thing and probably deserves a few more questions, whereas drink might maybe need one question on its own, maybe not. There's not much that can happen with the drink. So split those ones out. It's not telling you anything. Passenger communication, so communications within the air. This could be something that they have to be careful of. It's not a huge issue, but quality of internet connection is something that new users or people who have never flown, say, this airline before might not be used to it, and then they're expecting broadband speed and they're only getting satellite speed internet, and it's a very, very different experience. So you have to be a little bit careful about ranking the quality of the internet connection. It might need, again, a little bit more context around it. It might be something about, did the internet drop out often? Or it might not have to be, did you find you could load emails okay? But you wouldn't be expecting to be able to watch movies online and watching them like you could in full HD at home. So it has to be tooled a little bit differently. In-flight entertainment, rate that, choice of movies and things like that. They're kind of fine. What's the choice like? Choice of music, that's all kind of fine. In-flight entertainment experience, choice of language, sound, picture, things like that. What you want to be careful here is the entertainment in your language question here assumes that you're an English speaker. What if you speak Swahili or some other very, very not well-known language? You might not have many language options, and you might score that poor, but is it expected that you would have a whole full suite of Swahili movies or something? I don't know. So you've got to be a little bit careful about choice of your language, because some languages obviously are more popular than others. Quality of the sound and picture, again, this depends on the class of travel you're in and whether you had your own noise cancelling headphones. You might have had your own noise cancelling headphones and the sound quality was fantastic. So again, it's contextual, you've got to be careful. Overall in-flight entertainment, this is irrelevant considering other in-flight questions are asked. So you've asked a whole lot of other questions about in-flight entertainment. Why ask this overall question, which just muddies the waters? In-flight reading materials, they've got their own materials. Now here are we rating, if you look at how the questions are written, are we rating whether they're good publications or whether they're clean and undamaged publications? Also, foreign speakers may rate this differently, so again, be very precise. When you say please rate the in-flight reading material, be specific to say the quality of the cleanliness and quality of the material, or are you asking about the types of publications from a reading perspective? So again, I don't know what they're after, but you have to be very careful in managing it. Please rate the in-flight reading material on the following: newspapers, magazines. Well, again, in this case, on my flight, newspapers were not offered. So these answers of excellent, very good, did not use notice. Well, it's going to be a did not use notice, but I didn't get a newspaper. Was I supposed to get a newspaper? So I don't know that here. Now, again, this is where a mystery shopper could come in and say, like, we go through the cabin with newspapers on every flight, and we've got to make sure that happens. So a mystery shopper might look at it and say, well, let's make sure that happened or didn't happen. The way this is worded is very, very different. I just wasn't offered one, so I don't know if that's good or bad or just bad luck. Overall in-flight reading material, again, you don't need to ask this if you've asked other very good questions. So, they haven't mentioned here at all, they haven't mentioned the baggage pickup, the deplaning experience. There are a lot of things they haven't asked, and they've asked a lot of things that they shouldn't have asked. It is completely repairable, but what I want to use with this example is just walk you through and say, like, we do these surveys, but we're either getting junk, we're annoying our customers, or we're getting bad information with false positives or negatives that shouldn't have been there or whatever. So have a good think about it. If you have any questions about conducting a survey, please contact me, Stephen DiPietro at serviceintegrity.com.au.